So, what's going on, guys? Hope everybody's having a great week so far. Just want to touch base. I wanted to drop 5 super simple tips and tricks to make your job as a mechanic a little bit less stressful. But here is my number one trick. It's basically just a muffin tin. I use it to organize nuts and bolts, various things. It just helps keep everything organized and prevents them from getting mixed up with other things. It definitely adds a lot of speed if you are a mechanic, especially working flat rate. You can definitely maximize on your time doing it this way, and it helps just to keep everything nice and organized. It looks a little bit more professional. My second trick is, whenever you're working upside down and you got a nut and you put it in the socket, but it keeps falling out, right? So what could you do to keep that in there? You might be working at your toolbox, you ain't got anything crazy there, so you need to figure out a way in which you can put the nut in the socket and keep it in there. So easiest thing to do is just grab your little piece of paper, rip you off a corner of it, fold it up, and then what you're going to end up doing is sticking it on the socket, and then you're going to take the nut and then push the nut in through. So basically you're utilizing the piece of paper to take up the slack in the socket that you might have from wear and tear on the sockets. Sometimes it's a little hard, but once you get it in there, you'll be just fine. And you can put it on your stud or whatever you may have that you're working on, or even if it's a bolt, it keeps it from falling out of your socket. Another way you could use is just use some butyl tape like you use on door panels for the moisture barrier. You can use that also, but the paper just keeps everything clean. For the third tip and trick, we always have those universal sockets, the unions. So a lot of guys will take electrical tape and tape them up, and that works. But before you know it, the electrical tape's ripped and you got the sticky residue everywhere, and it's just aggravating. There's a much simpler way of doing this, and what it is you're gonna end up taking a O-ring, just a various O-ring. Typically it'll be undersized as far as the outside diameter of your universal socket. You'll grab you a O-ring that's a little bit smaller than the universal itself, and you're just going to simply slide it over it. And what it does, if you'll look here, it's going to take up the slack, and it adds just a little bit of a drag on the swivel points on the universal socket. So it takes up a lot of the free slop. But here's another trick for you. Kind of goes out to all the new guys out there. You got a spark plug, alright? So you're trying to get your spark plugs in there, and you don't want to cross thread them, And a lot of the new guys at my shop have been cross threading spark plugs. A simple way about going about this: you could take a piece of fuel line or a vacuum line. Doesn't really matter. But what you're gonna do, you're gonna slide it over the contact point on the spark plug, and it's going to allow you to have enough drag on the threads to be able to thread it in. It's also going to prevent you from cross-threading it, because honestly you can't get that much torque on it by just using a fuel line, if you know what I mean. That's another trick. But on for the last one here. And last but not least, okay, so running you through this. So you got a nut, and you seem to have made a mistake. You've rounded off your nut. Well, if you go down a size, the socket's too small, it won't fit on. You go up a size, and obviously you already have the issue in which you have on the correct socket size. So what can you do to get this thing off? Say you're working remotely, you can't get pliers in there, you can't get an extractor in there. So you need some trick in which you can use to grab a little bit more leverage in hopes that you can get this thing out. Before you go getting crazy with everything, take a little bit of valve grinding compound and put it around the perimeter of your nut. Try that, see if that helps out any. Oftentimes I've had instances in which that was just enough to be able to create enough friction inside of the socket so that the socket grabbed the fastener and it took it off. But yeah, that's 5 super simple tricks that I've learned over the years as being a mechanic. And hopefully it makes your job a little bit less stressful. And if you hadn't, go ahead and like this video, comment which your favorite trick was down below, And go ahead and subscribe if you like this content. I'm definitely going to try to turn out some more and just share what I've learned throughout the years. But as always, guys, y'all have a great weekend.